Are you tired of feeling crushed by debt? Does the thought of your credit score fill you with dread? This week, we're cutting through the confusion, and join me as we recap 6 powerful strategies for attacking debt and mastering credit, answering your toughest questions with actionable, fuel-filled steps. Don't miss this crucial episode of Financially Confident Christian. Your path to financial freedom starts right now. Hey there, welcome back to your special Sunday edition of Financially Confident Christian. I'm Ralph, and it's great to be with you for another exciting recap episode. This show helps you answer that question: how can I become a financially confident Christian? And over the past 6 days, we've continued our conversation into confronting debt and navigating that often confusing world of credit. These are often areas that bring significant stress to people, but also they're huge opportunities for freedom when we can approach them wisely. And today we're going to go quickly recap each of those 6 episodes, and then for each one, I've got some great listener questions that have come in that really bring these concepts to life. So grab a warm drink, get comfortable, and let's get into our recap today. This past week has been packed with strategies for attacking debt and gaining clarity on your credit decisions. We started the week with this simple question: how do I stay motivated when paying off debt feels hopeless? And in that show, we really focused on keeping your goals visible and celebrating milestones and really drawing strength from faith and from your community. I think that was a really good show. And if you missed any of them, I'm going to encourage you to go back and listen. The second thing we got to, second in the week, we asked this question: should I use a balance transfer or consolidation for high interest debt? We discussed prayerfully researching these tools to accelerate payoff while understanding the risk associated with those things. By midweek, we had reached this question: how can I avoid getting back into debt? We covered developing conscious habits and those boundaries, like that wait, or what I call the pause rule, and really working to strengthen your emergency fund. Then we got to Thursday's episode and we asked this very pointed question. And that was, can I use credit wisely without falling into debt? That was a question that was really on the mind of a lot of people, and I really emphasize that strict self-discipline and committing to pay that full statement balance each month. In fact, that was the commitment that we made. Are you sticking with your commitment? I sure hope you are. By Friday, we got to, what does my credit score actually mean for me? A lot of people get hung up on those credit scores. So we demystified the credit reports. We talked about credit scores, and we discussed accessing your free report for awareness. Again, that was annualcreditreport.com. And then on Saturday, we got to this big takeaway question: how can I fix mistakes and improve my credit score? We talked about disputing errors and focusing on those key habits like on-time payments and low credit utilization. It has really been a week of strategic debt attack and empowering credit knowledge. And these topics, they bring out significant questions, and they talk about real strategies. And I've got some excellent questions from listeners just like you who asked questions after the show. So let's get to our first question related to how do I stay motivated when debt feels hopeless? And this question came to us from Michael. And Michael wrote this. He said, Ralph, I've been using the debt snowball and finding extra money like you said. I paid off my first small debt, and that felt great for a minute. But looking at the next one, it's much bigger, and I'm already feeling discouraged again. How do I keep celebrating those wins and stay motivated when the next mountain looks so much higher? Wow, Michael, you're absolutely right. And thank you for your honesty in answering that question, because that feeling that you're having right now is incredibly common. I remember going through this myself when I was going through that debt spiral, that debt cycle. And I got the first one paid off, and I felt, fantastic. I got this debt paid off. And then I looked on my sheet, and I was like, oh, here, this next one, this is a doozy. So, Michael, this feels incredibly common. A lot of people are dealing with that, and you have to think about it in this term. Like I said during that show, and I'm going to repeat it right now. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Paying off your debts, you didn't make them overnight. So it is a marathon to get them paid off. And I just want you to remember this truth. And this one came to us from the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And it says this: therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And I just thought that was such a powerful verse to talk about today, because what it's really keying in on, Michael, and everyone else listening, is it's your why. It's that why for debt freedom, because if you don't understand your why, it is really hard to keep moving. And that's why I talked about that. How do I stay motivated when paying off debt feels hopeless? That was the whole point. And we talked about the exercise that I'm going to mention here in a second during that show. And that is to really visualize that fully debt-free future. What does that look like for you? Not worrying about that debt hanging over your head and that big mountain in front of you. And I really focused on developing the why for you, because you got to keep that why visible in front of you so that you know what you're working for. The second thing we talk about is breaking down that journey into smaller milestones beyond just that first debt, because, Michael, it's great you got past that first one. And that's the whole point of using that method. And maybe you hit that total amount paid goal that you were looking for with that first one, but maybe it's time to sort of refocus. Maybe you want to set a certain dollar amount goal. Maybe, I don't know how much debt you have, but let's just say you have $10,000 in debt. Well, maybe you set a goal for, I'm going to pay the first $2,500 off, or maybe half, or whatever that next specific debt is. I'm going to really encourage you to plan small, non-financial celebrations for these mini milestones. You want to try to keep that consistency going. You want to keep that momentum building. And you got to celebrate that consistency in what you're doing here. And when you find extra money, that's a way to win. I'm also going to encourage you again to share your progress with an accountability partner. I mentioned this in a show when we talked about who should I share my financial goals with, and help them to celebrate with you and draw strength from their faith. And then don't forget about praying. I think it's a great time to just sit there and pray for renewed motivation each day. It's tough when you've got this big mountain of debt in front of you and you look at it and you're like, man, this is just about insurmountable. How am I going to ever do this? And Michael, like I said, you're not alone feeling this way. But there are tools and there are people that will support you. So start with a prayer, surround yourself with people who can help you, and just look at it as a one day and the next day and the next day, but keep celebrating that progress, not just completion. So Michael, I just want to thank you so much for your question, because it really brought all the things we talked about to light in your question today. Well, let's look at our second listener question, and this was related to that whole topic I talked about, balance transfers and consolidations. And this question comes to us from Emily. This is what Emily wrote. She said, you talked about balance transfers and consolidation, and should I use a balance transfer or consolidation for high interest debt? And what she said further, she said, it sounds tempting to lower interest, but I'm afraid I'll just end up with one more debt, especially if I transfer a balance but don't pay it off before that 0% ends. And then she hit me with the big zinger of questions. And she said this, she said, how do I know if it's a truly wise step and not a potential trap? Well, Emily, that fear is absolutely valid, and it's something that a lot of people have expressed to me. And that's why I approached that episode with a great deal of caution. Because as I said in the show, these tools can be very powerful, but you need to remember, these are not magic fixes. You're not going to sell you a whammo and everything is gone away. They require significant discipline. And remember, we tied this into the book of Proverbs. I want to revisit that right now about discernment and wise counsel. And that was from Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. And it says this, where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. Think about that for a second. What is it saying there? Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. And we also talked about Proverbs chapter 24, verse 6, said this, for by wise guidance, you can wage your war, and in abundance of counselors, there is victory. See, the struggle here is seeing that the temptation of those lower interest rates, and that's great. You saw a lower interest rate. Oh, look, I can save a lot of money, Ralph, by doing that. That is the first step, but that's not the part you got to focus on. You've got to focus then on that, the discipline required and the potential pitfalls that you might run into. And that's why I shared in that particular episode my action step. And this was the key thing here. You got to prayerfully consider your specific situation and your habits. See, this is where you have to be brutally honest with yourself. If you're going to just go and get a consolidation loan or something like that, and you're just going to charge things back up again, all you've done is make the problem bigger. So ask yourself these type of questions. Have you consistently stuck to your budget? Do you have a budget? Are you sticking to it? Are you consistently not accumulating new debt? If you're accumulating new debt, this is not the answer for you. And another thing I really want you to consider is, do you have a realistic plan? And don't forget the other side of this. And the discipline to pay off the entire transferred or consolidated amount before any promotional rate expires, like you talked about in your question. Are you going to get it paid off before that 0% expires? Unfortunately, I've seen it happen way too many times where people say, oh, Ralph, I'm going to go get this consolidation loan. And the next thing you know, it was just an excuse to just push the meatball, as they say, down the road a little bit. If any of your answers to those questions I just asked you are shaky or maybe, then I got to be very honest with you. These tools are likely not the right step for you to take right now. So if you don't do that, what I'm going to instead focus on, if you're worried about that 0% and you don't have the discipline, you don't have that budget, focus on building stronger habits. That's the one thing you can do right now. You can build stronger habits. You can build stronger budgeting habits. You can build stronger tracking habits, and you can avoid debt in the first place. But if you are disciplined and you have a solid payoff plan for the consolidated amount, then you can save money. You can save interest, and that is huge. That is, in fact, wise stewardship. But don't forget about the other side of that. There's a temptation to rack up debt on the old card or not pay off the new loan. That temptation is very real. And that's why I encourage you to seek counsel from trusted financial friends. Like I talked about in that episode, who should I share my financial goals with? Or maybe this is a time to go meet with one of those nonprofit credit counseling services. So overall, big takeaway here, Emily, is approach these tools with caution. Understand your habits. Understand where you are in this process. Because listen, I don't expect you to be an expert in this overnight. This takes time. But approach it with caution. Approach it with prayer. Again, go to God and say, God, here's what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think I should do? And then the end of this, the big piece of this, and I mentioned this in the show that I did that day, you got to have deep self-awareness. Are you going to follow through? Do you have the discipline to do what you are needing to do? Or are you just going to just push that down a road a little farther, incur some more debt? Now you've got capacity to go charge up more things. So again, Emily, I just want to thank you for your question. It really hit home what I was trying to convey in that episode. Well, let's move to our third question. And this one was related to avoiding new debt, kind of follows along with what Emily was asking. And this question comes to us from James. And this is what James wrote to me. He said, Ralph, I'm really trying to avoid new debt after listening to your How Can I Avoid Getting Back in the Debt show. But unexpected things happen. My car needed a repair I didn't save enough for. How strict do I need to be about not using credit cards when my emergency fund isn't huge yet? Now, James, the thing I love about it, first off, thank you for your question. And this is a very common real life struggle. But what I love about your question is it tells me that you're getting to the point of discipline, because you say this, you say, when my emergency fund isn't huge, and then you end it with this, yet. That's beautiful, because you're recognizing the importance of that emergency fund. Now, I know that's not exactly what you asked here, but when you wrote that, man, I was like, that is a home run there. Because like I said, James, this is a very common real life struggle. Because as I said on the show, I play church league softball, for example. It's slow pitching. You have to arc the ball and all that sort of thing. Well, I love to hit. I'm a pretty good hitter, if I don't say so myself, for a 52-year-old old man. And I love to hit a curveball, because here's the thing. Life throws curveballs, and softball pitchers throw curveballs. And if you are patient and you just wait to swing at the last minute, man, you can whack a curveball a long way. But we have to accept that life throws us curveballs. And as you alluded to, James, it's tough when your emergency fund isn't fully built yet. I love the fact that you're working on that, but in your particular situation, it's clear it's not built yet. So you're trying to balance this struggle of no new debt versus unexpected financial challenges. And that's not easy. But remember the wisdom that we talked about in that show about avoiding new debt. It does require intentionality. It requires discipline. And what I mentioned there, that single solution was to develop conscious habits and clear boundaries. But James, you answered your own question. Because the ultimate defense against needing new debt for emergencies is that fully funded emergency fund. So in your particular case, I think the answer is yes, you're going to have to use credit if you don't have the emergency fund. One of the things I don't want to see you do is just completely wipe out your emergency fund. So if your emergency fund isn't huge, it highlights the critical importance of building that emergency fund. I've talked about that on this show many times. So as you pay down that debt that you might have to incur for this unexpected repair, also prioritize strengthening your emergency fund like crazy. Maybe you look for every extra dollar you can find to throw into that emergency fund to help build that shield against new debt. And see, in a true unavoidable emergency, when savings fall short, then you got a different decision to make. So James, here's the second part of my answer to your question. I think in your case, using a low interest credit card, if you've got to, and here's the other side of that. I mean, you got to get your car fixed, right? Because I guess you could walk, but if you got to get your car fixed, use a low interest credit card, but have a plan to pay it off as quickly and as temporarily as possible. Yes, it's what I'll call a necessary evil. It's got to be your last resort, not the first, but do it with extreme discipline. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about, can I use credit wisely without falling into debt? And pay it full always. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. Because remember, the goal isn't just to avoid debt. That's part of it. But to build that financial resistance, to build that emergency fund. Because if you have that, guess what? It makes new debt unnecessary. So James, I just want to thank you so much for your question. It exactly illustrated the importance, the very critical importance of having that emergency fund. Because like you said, life throws curveballs. Let's move on to our fourth question. This one's related to using credit wisely. And this question comes to us from Bonnie. I actually think this is the first time I've ever got a question from somebody named Bonnie. But Bonnie, this is what Bonnie wrote. She said, Ralph, I'm confused. Can a Christian actually use a credit card without getting into trouble? Or should I just ditch them all to avoid debt altogether like some people say? Now, here's the thing. Bonnie, I know exactly where you're going from. There are people out there who talk about financial counseling and all this stuff. Say, don't ever use credit cards. I'm not gonna name who these people are because people know who these people are. And I think that, Bonnie, you've got a great question here. It's a fantastic question. And it does create a lot of confusion because there's a lot of people that say, oh, credit cards are evil. Credit cards are terrible, Rob. You should never use credit cards. But it's not that simple. See, the struggle you're really talking about, Bonnie, is discernment. Wise financial practice and maybe having these absolute rules. See, I'm a believer that there are no absolutes. Now, that probably isn't the right thing to say in terms of, I believe there is absolute right and wrong. But when it comes to this, the thing I want to really reinforce, and I tried to really reinforce that in the episode, and Bonnie, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Credit is simply a tool. It's just a tool, like any tool. I mentioned in the show, you could use a hammer. A carpenter uses a hammer and builds beautiful things. Well, you can also use a hammer to break stuff. So like any tool, it can be used for good or it can be used for ill. What we're really talking about here is bad debt. Bad debt is using that tool to spend money you don't have and paying interest on it. That's the part we want to avoid, Bonnie. But if you can use responsibly, if you can do what I call responsible credit usage, that's using that tool for your convenience. The thing that's great about credit cards is they're a great convenience. They can offer you purchase protection. You can get credit card rewards. They can build a credit history, which can be really important if you need to go borrow money for a mortgage or get a car loan. But as I mentioned in that show, and I'm going to reiterate it right now, spending only money you already have and have budgeted for. So Bonnie, if you're asking me the question in a different way, you didn't say this in your question, but I'm going to go there. If you're saying to me, Ralph, listen, I don't have the money to pay for stuff, I want to go buy something, but I can't afford to pay for it, then by all means, don't use a credit card. But if you've got the money to pay for that and you're like, hey, I just want to use this credit card because I get points, I get this, I get that, and you're going to pay that full statement balance every single month before the interest accrues, then I say, yes, go ahead and use it. And like I said, approach credit usage with a strict, faith-fueled self-discipline. If you can commit to paying that full statement balance every single month, I mentioned in that show to pay it automatically, and then only use that card when it's budgeted, then yes, by all means, you can use credit wisely. But if you're one of those people that knows you struggle with overspending, and let's be honest here, I've been there. Maybe you're sitting there listening right now. You're like, I'm right there with you, dude. I'm not very good at this. If I've got that credit card and I'm at the mall, shazam, it goes down. Then maybe for you, it's time to ditch those credit cards or lock them up. We talked about in the show, put them in a block of ice and freezing it in the freezer or burying them in the backyard. I really believe it's good to have a credit card as a fallback. Now, again, I want to start with that emergency fund, but you may use a credit card as a fallback. But ask yourself that really difficult question. Be honest with yourself. If you're going to struggle, don't put yourself in jeopardy. Don't put yourself in that position. So prioritize avoiding debt first. And if you've got the money, if you're strict, if you follow discipline, you pay that balance off in every month with no interest charges, then hey, by all means, use that credit card. So Bonnie, I just want to thank you again for your question. It's one I hear all the time because so many people get hung up on some of these knuckleheads. They hear, oh, you should never have a credit card. Okay, that's great. But then when you go to rent a car, how do you pay for that? Or when you need to go put a deposit on something, or you want to buy something online. So I think they got their heads buried where the sun doesn't shine. I just think that's a dumb thing to tell people. But again, I don't disagree with the approach if you can't manage it. So again, Bonnie, thank you for your question. Well, let's move on to our fifth question. This is related to credit scores. And this question came from David. A lot of people get tied up in credit scores. And I remember when I worked at a credit union, a lot of people didn't understand that. But this is what David wrote me. He said, Ralph, I checked my credit report for the first time after listening to your show. What does my credit score actually mean for me? And my score was much lower than I thought. Yeah, David, I hear you, dude. There's a lot of people say that. Honestly, he goes on to say, it feels a bit defeating. And then he asked me his question. He says, how much does this really affect my life? And is it worth worrying about? That is a brilliant and great and brave question, David, because you took the bravery to go look at that credit report. A lot of people don't even bother. My credit's bad. I don't want to look at it. Because if they look at it, then they're going to have to think about, well, am I going to do something about it? And listen, I get it. That initial feeling of a disappointment or feeling like you've been defeated, that's a real struggle. And it's a common one because it's a score. It's like when you were in school. And I don't know about you, but when I got my report card, I wanted to look at my report card. I wanted all straight A's. Well, if I got C's, D's, or if I got an F, I was in bigger trouble at home. But let's just say I got some C's and low B's and C's. Well, the credit report, the credit score is no different than that. It's a struggle. It's that feeling. But here's the thing you need to understand, David. I hope I made this point, and I'm going to make it again right now. This is not a fixed reality. So yes, your credit score is important in today's financial system. It does impact. It impacts your ability to get loans for a car, your ability to get loans for a home. I mentioned in this show, when I did that show the other day, I was trying to get a car loan at one point. I got pulled into the finance guy's office, and it was the most embarrassing time of my life. He said, Rob, your credit's not so great. I don't think we're going to be able to help you. So yes, it impacts your ability to get loans. It impacts the interest rate you're going to pay. So if your credit's not so good, you may still get the loan, but you're going to pay a lot more for it. I've been there and done that as well. I've had other situations where, again, these are all my decisions. I wasn't ironing my credit. I went into the finance guy's office, and he says, well, good news and bad news, Ralph. I got your car loan approved, but man, the interest rate is sky high. So you got to realize, lenders are using that because they're judging your character. A credit score is a character score. Again, we're not talking about your Christian character. We're not talking about your value as it relates to you as a human being. But from a creditor's perspective, that's what they look at. You also have to be aware, some things like insurance premiums or getting a rental apartment, all these things can tie into that credit score. So yes, David, it's important. But remember what I read to you that day from the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 1. And I think we really need to focus in on this for just a moment. It said this in the Bible. It says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. And David, the truth of the matter is, and I don't know how else I can't sugarcoat this and say it any differently. Your credit score is part of your financial name. It's part of your financial reputation. So yes, it's absolutely worth understanding and it's absolutely worth managing. Now, I talked about what do you do? Well, like I said in this show, first thing you want to do is go get that free credit report. Again, annualcreditreport.com is the only one, as I understand it, that the government actually sanctions. You can get a copy of it once a year. Start there. That's the first part of that. Get the credit report. Read it. Look at it. What does it say? Listen, it's a judgment of the past. Know that when you go into it. When you're looking at this credit score, you go, oh, that credit, that's not good, dude. This is not good at all. But just recognize that is what was done prior to you pulling that report. You're not going to be judged the rest of your days by what's on that credit report right at that moment. Now, that being said, this gives you an opportunity to build healthier habits. Now, if you just want to say, you know what, Ralph, my credit's terrible. I'm never going to have credit. I give up. That's not the right answer either. So there are things that you can do. I gave you some concrete steps to improve it. So don't let that initial number defeat you. Let it be a motivator. Let it be a motivator for change. And David, I just want to thank you so much for your question. And I hear you. It's tough when you pull that credit and you're like, man, that score is not what I expected. Things my grandfather used to say, and I'm going to say this right now, hey, it can only get better from here. If you take the time, you invest, get those debts paid off, get those you credit utilization rates down, you can do this, David. I have confidence in you. Well, let's move to our sixth question, our last question for today, and that was related to fixing your credit. What a great transition. What do you think, David? And our final question for this show came from Jackie. Jackie said this. She said, Ralph, I checked my credit report like you recommended, and what does my credit score actually mean for me? And I found an old collection account I didn't even know about. My score is really low because of it. How do I even start fixing that? And can it really help my credit score like you said? Or will it just be a waste of my time? Yeah, Jackie, it is frustrating. Because again, you're going back to something that happened before. You made a mistake. You made a bad decision. This is probably something you weren't expecting. But here's the thing I'm going to say to you, and you're going to be surprised when I say this. Thank God you found it. Because now that you see it, you can do something about it. Now, I'm assuming this is something you are aware of, something that you did, you maybe had forgotten about it, so then you have an opportunity to pay it or fix it or whatever it is. But maybe it's not correct. And that's why I talked in that show about taking intentional steps to dispute the inaccuracies and focus on the key habits to improve it. So Jackie, first thing you want to do, as I mentioned in the show, dispute the accuracy of that. Because like I mentioned in the show, if you dispute it and the lender doesn't get back, and if you're talking about an old collection, to be very candid with you, a lot of times either the lender doesn't exist anymore, or they just, hey, that's so old, I'm not going to worry about it. So if you dispute it, this is not Ralph saying to you, don't pay your bills. That's not what I'm saying. But from a practical standpoint, if you dispute this debt and the lender doesn't respond, they're going to take that off your credit report. Now, you may have to follow up with all three credit bureaus, but to do that will absolutely, you asked the question, I want to get to your answer, Jackie. It absolutely will help your credit score. Your credit score is based on all of these things. So like I said in the show that day, the first thing, the most crucial first step, if it's an error, dispute that error. You're going to gather your information. And it might be, let me go, where do I find this? Maybe you say, oh, I thought I paid that. Go do your homework because maybe you didn't pay it. But then I said, go to the credit bureau's websites. And remember, the three credit bureaus, the big ones, are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And again, I'm going to mention it again. I'll put it in the show notes today too. Annualcreditreport.com, and follow their dispute process. Be diligent and be persistent, but follow their instructions. And listen, these disputes are not going to be resolved overnight. If you think it's going to be, oh, I made a dispute today and tomorrow my credit score is going to be perfect again. No, but there are time limits, so it's not going to take years. It's not going to take months. It might take a month or two. But while that dispute is happening, focus intensely on what other things you can do to build that credit score. Now, I'm going to take a minute here and just talk about those things. The biggest thing you can do to improve your credit score is to be consistent and make on-time payments for all of your bills. One of the best ways that you can do that is set up automatic payments. Now, I'm not saying to set up an automatic payment, just pay the minimum. We'll talk about that again in another time. But set up to make sure your payments are always made on time. If that means setting up automatic payments for everything, I think that's a great idea. The second thing, the biggest second thing you can do is keep those credit card balances low, because I talked about this in this show. And a lot of people don't get this. That credit utilization ratio is enormous. Basically, they're looking for your credit utilization to be less than 30%. Now, you might be saying, Ralph, again, I have no idea what you're talking about. Real simple example. Let's say you've got a $1,000 credit card. That's your credit limit. If you've got anything more than $300 owed on that credit card, that is going to affect your credit negatively. They don't want that to ever be more than 30%. Now, there's a couple of easy ways to prevent that. My oldest son does this. He uses his credit card like a champ. He pays that credit card every single payday. He's never going to pay any interest. He's never going to pay it late. And guess what? His percentage is never going to be very high. That's one of the big things you can do, is keep that utilization under 30%. So make sure all your payments are made on time and keep that utilization low. Now, a lot of people are I'm going to say something now, which a lot of financial experts are going to say, Ralph, I can't believe you don't. Here's one of the things you might want to consider. Call them and see if they will increase your credit limit. Now, again, think about what I'm saying to you. It's not an opportunity. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's not a time, hey, they doubled my credit limit. Let me go spend. That's not what I'm saying at all. But one of the quickest ways to improve your credit score, if you've got that constant utilization ratio. I remember a client told me about this. He said, Ralph, I put everything on my credit card. I get paid once a month. So at the end of the month, I pay off my credit card balance in full, but it looks like I've got really high balances. Because with the timing of it, when they report, I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Call your credit card company. They're going to love you because they're going to look at your payment history. They're going to look at the fact that you pay it in full every month and ask them to increase your credit limit. I remember he called me back and he says, Ralph, you're never going to believe this. They tripled my credit limit. I said, that's fantastic. But remember, discipline. Don't go charge it up because now you've got more to spend. That's the wrong answer. That's going to get you in worse trouble. But you can expand your credit limit. And like I said, best case scenario, pay your bills on time, keep that ratio under 30%, and look at these things in the long term. It's all about long-term financial health, and it's all about reducing that stress. So I'm going to encourage you, Jackie, and everyone else listening, don't give up. You can overcome these obstacles. We started with the question about paying off that first debt and seeing that mountain before us. You can do this. Well, how about we pray together? Father God, thank you for the wisdom you provide in your word. We so focused on that today. And Lord, we want you to help us navigate these complex financial topics. And we confess, Lord, that tackling debt strategies and understanding credit can bring us struggles. It can bring us confusion. And sometimes, Lord, it can bring us a little bit of overwhelm and fear and depression sometimes. So, Lord, we just thank you for the clarity that you offer us through our prayers and through our study. And I just ask you right now to bless Michael and bless Emily and James and Bonnie and David and Jackie and everyone else who sent in questions or who are listening right now. Help them apply these principles we talked about, Lord, and grant us all discernment in using financial tools wisely, with discipline, and avoiding new debt. Lord, as it says in your word, we don't want to become a slave to the lender. And Lord, we just ask for your perseverance in building a strong financial reputation, Lord, because you said it to us. Our name, our character is important. Help us trust you completely, Lord, with our finances and with our future. And we ask this in confidence. In Jesus' name, amen. Wow, what a powerful week of getting into debt strategies and credit, from maintaining motivation and exploring tools for high-interest debt to building that defense against new debt and taking control of your credit reputation. These steps are all vital for gaining control. And remember, overall, we're trying to reduce that financial stress. So I just want to thank you again for all the questions that you sent in. I wasn't able to use all of them, but those were amazing questions. And they really helped us illustrate these important topics. And I'm just going to encourage you right now, keep applying these principles this week. And you can always send in your questions for future recap episodes. Go to our website at financiallyconfidentchristian.com. And don't forget, I've got a special gift for you on that journey today. For the first 100 listeners who go to my website, financiallyconfidentchristian.com/master, I'm going to give you a free copy of my book. It's called Mastering Your Finances. As I've mentioned, it's quick, it's a powerful read designed as a starting point to help you break that cycle of financial shame and step into confidence. Again, you'll get that by going to financiallyconfidentchristian.com/master and get your free copy today. Now, tomorrow, we're going to shift our focus to the income side of the equation. We've talked a lot about debt and strategies, but tomorrow we're going to talk about the income side. We're going to be asking if your income is actually the real source of your stress, or are there new opportunities to explore? So you don't want to miss it, so make sure you join me then. And let's all go out there and be financially confident Christians. You can do this. I have confidence in you. Have confidence in yourself. Stay financially savvy. God bless you, and you have a great day today.
Thank you for joining us today on the Financially Confident Christian Show, where we're breaking the cycle of financial shame with confidence and faith. If you found value in this episode, a simple click to subscribe means you'll be invited right back for our next conversation. And remember, financial challenges don't have to be overwhelming. Just ask Ralph. This show is a production of Ask Ralph Media and is supported by Saggio Accounting Plus. The information shared in this episode is based on data available as of the date of release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. are under no obligation to update this content if circumstances change. Please note that applying this information to your personal situation requires careful consideration. This episode is not intended to serve as financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult your trusted tax advisor or attorney before taking action based on anything we've discussed.